Alright, guys, I'm on my way to work, but I have some videos to record, so apologize if I'm wearing my work uniform during videos. I feel like I do this a lot and don't explain it, but I don't know why I feel the need to explain it this time. Anyways, I watched Watchmen Chapter 1. It's a very quick watch, so I watched it while I was getting ready for work this morning. It was an hour, 20 minutes. If you want my thoughts on all the previous Watchmen media, I did a review of the original graphic novel, the Zack Snyder film. I did not do the TV series. I do plan to, but I wanted to save it for closer when part 2 comes out of this, which I read is not coming out till next year, which I think is a big mistake on WB and the creative teams behind this, or who is ever releasing and putting this out. Um, so Watchmen, I love the graphic novel, and this is basically a one-to-one translation of the graphic novel. And so with that, it comes the faults of it being that, but also the pros of it being that the graphic novel is incredibly well written. It's got a lot of profound ideas that are all here, lines of dialogue, beat for beat sequences, literally like the exact same. There's a couple sequences where it's clear that they trimmed down some stuff, or they shuffled some sequences around a little bit. But for the most part, this is a direct one-to-one translation of the first few chapters of the graphic novel. And as that is pretty good at translating that graphic novel. Here's the problem, though. Alan Moore wrote Watchmen to be in graphic novel form and only work in that format. So this is not a bad movie. Like, I honestly watched that again, and that's more than I can say for a lot of DC animated movies. I feel like they are usually one-time watches, or watches that I go back to every once in a while. This one, to me, I will go back and watch because it is really good. It's got great voice acting. The animation I thought would bother me, it really doesn't. The only time it bothered me, there's a couple sequences in the daytime that I think look really terrible because it it's made to look like the comic book and the illustrations in the book, right? And I think with that, it's like, okay, it needs kind of that darker edges of the nighttime sequences, and so it works better with that. But in the other sequence, it's just like, oh, okay. But I think it works. But where this movie falters is like, it's very chapter based in the graphic novel. Like, it's very like, oh, here's this little bit about this character in this chapter, and then you flip to the next chapter. It really only works in that format. This isn't a complete story, not just because a chapter one, but also because it's missing a lot of like how a graphic novel plays out. Like when you're watching this movie, you're not really getting a movie because you're watching sequences. So like the overarching plot of Watchmen is there's this comedian, this character named the comedian gets murdered, and you got Rorschach here who's investigating all this shit, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And he that's the main overarching plotline. But a lot of this movie is sequences with characters, flashbacks, things like that. That, overall add up to something, but for the most part, it's more just giving you a sense of this world. Like, some of those things you probably could cut out, but you would be missing a lot in some ways. So I just don't think Watchmen will ever work in a movie format, but this is the closest we will ever get to it working, and as that, it is pretty damn good. I was pretty impressed by this being a Wonder Woman translation. I actually enjoy that DC did something different with the animation this time, because I think that Watchmen is so different from other DC stuff, and a lot of times recently it's been trying to been blend in with other DC stuff, and that's just not a great idea. These things should be separate. Yeah, it's published by DC, but it's not DC. And Watchmen is pretty interesting. So I don't know what, but yeah, I know this is a mixed bag of review. Like if you really like Watchmen, go watch this. You'll get something out of it, but don't expect a movie. because it's not a movie. That's my recommendation.